I bought a house with a garden and my hubby said to me that his mom and sis are moving in too. I said, "What the hell? Are you kidding?" It was right after I bought a house with a garden that my husband Tom and mother-in-law Maria, both grinning, declared that my in-laws would move in with us. "They are moving in too. If you don't like it, I'll make my son divorce you," Maria said. If she came, her nasty daughter would surely follow. They knew I hated this and did it anyway. The daily harassment would continue even in the new house. I shuddered at the thought. "No, I don't want to live with you," I said. "What you don't seem to understand," Maria said, her eyebrows shooting up as she pulled out divorce papers from somewhere, "is your position." My husband's part was already signed. Her face showed she only cared about getting the house. Their plan had worked perfectly, which was terrifying. I struggled to hold back my laughter. My mother-in-law, seeing me trembling with my head down, looked triumphant. I quietly signed the divorce papers, packed my things, and left the dreaded house. I got a barrage of calls from my ex-mother-in-law on moving day. "Have you realized yet?" she demanded, wanting to meet and talk. That's exactly what I wanted. I would meet her and put an end to this myself. I made thorough preparations to confront them and headed to the showdown. "My name is Nicole. I work at an advertising agency. My husband John was introduced to me by Justin, a manager at a newspaper company. As someone in a weak position, I couldn't refuse Justin's offer. I was 29 at the time, and after 6 months of dating, I married John due to his persistence. I ended up cursing myself for making a poor decision at such a crucial moment. I think my ex-mother-in-law, Karen, intended to deceive me from the start. She seemed gentle and kind, but her attitude changed as soon as I married John. She dropped the mask of a reasonable older woman and revealed her true colors as a cruel mother-in-law. "Hey, Nicole, what are you doing?" she'd say. "I told you to weed the garden after cleaning the dishes." Not a day passed without her shrill voice echoing through the house. I felt exhausted every day. I could barely manage a sigh in response. After the wedding, I agreed to live with my in-laws at John's insistence. His father had passed away, and Karen had been struggling with a leg injury for years. He begged me, saying he couldn't leave his aging mother alone in the old house. But when I got there, I saw Karen walking around just fine. She claimed educating a daughter-in-law was a mother-in-law's duty and treated me harshly every day. John was no help either. Whenever I suggested living apart, he made excuses and avoided the issue. He was always doing whatever she wanted. He never stood up for me when she scolded me. "Yeah, my mom has quite a temper, huh?" he'd say, grinning. "Stop grinning and help me. This is hard for me." After getting married, I began to feel intense anxiety and depression. I found myself crying unexpectedly or feeling nauseous for no reason. After consulting a specialist, the doctor diagnosed me with an adjustment disorder. The thought that every day spent at my in-laws was affecting me negatively was truly unpleasant. Despite my feelings, she continued to make unreasonable demands. "Don't be lazy just because it's your day off," she'd say. "Have you finished cleaning the room? You haven't gone shopping yet. Have you made sure to check the discount stores before you go, please?" "Karen, please don't shout at me. I have a headache. I'll do the cleaning and shopping later," I'd plead. "Don't give me that. When you're told to do something, you do it immediately. You're the daughter-in-law, aren't you? A daughter-in-law is not a maid," she'd retort. Her demands often involved the house itself. "Clean the gutters," she'd say. "Replace the wallpaper. Fix the splinters in the pillars." The in-laws' house was very old and falling apart everywhere. It creaked whenever the wind blew. Each time she would urge John to get a new house. "This place is a rental, you know," she'd say. "We're renting it cheaply from an acquaintance. Just once I want to live freely in our own home. Don't you think so, John?" "I do, but we can't afford it on my salary," John would say. "A house of our own is just a dream." Karen grew frustrated with her useless son, of course. She took out her frustration on me. Cook, clean, weed the garden, take her to the hospital. She didn't care that I was exhausted from working full-time. It was no wonder I developed an adjustment disorder. I couldn't help but think that every day, 6 months after moving in with my in-laws, a woman who made my miserable life even worse arrived. John's sister Lily came back after her divorce, bringing her child with her. "He kicked me out," she said, referring to her ex. "Said he didn't want to see my face anymore. Well, it's my fault." I left my kid unattended and slept with my husband's senior. What kind of ethics does this woman have? Seeing my horrified expression, Lily smiled slightly. Lily, who looked just like Karen, acted just like her too. She refused to do any housework and made me clean her room as well. "It's only fair, right?" she said. "I'm raising a child. You wouldn't understand since you haven't given birth, but it's harder than it looks. So thanks in advance for your help, Nicole." Lily didn't work. She lazed around all day. Her childcare was half-hearted at best. She lounged on the sofa doing nothing. Her behavior was particularly bad on weekends. She'd leave her young daughter with me and go to the arcade. Lily had some bad friends from her rebellious days and would sometimes start drinking in the afternoon with them. I wished she would at least help with some of the housework, but Lily did absolutely nothing. She was the kind of woman who would do anything to get money for fun. This is what happened one day. Lily handed me a drawstring bag. When I looked inside, I saw my dad's cufflinks, ring, and vintage lighters. "What? What do you expect me to do with these?" I asked. "Figure it out," she said. "Sell them and make sure you get a good price, okay?" The belongings of my late father. These were supposed to be keepsakes, yet Lily casually told me to sell them. I felt a wave of sadness. The thought of her using the money to go to the arcade made it even worse. Unable to bring myself to do it, I explained the situation and handed the bag over to John. I don't know what he did with his father's keepsakes, and frankly, I don't want to know. When Lily first returned, many things happened. My belongings frequently went missing after she arrived. I also discovered around that time that John was probably having an affair. A friend who worked at a different advertising agency had happened to see him in town on a weekend. John was walking arm in arm with a flashy young woman. I was furious when I heard the story. "I'm working hard from morning till night, even on weekends, and you're out having fun with a young woman? Unbelievable. This is cheating, right? Who is she? Tell me the truth." "It's not cheating," John said. "She's just a worker from a massage parlor." "And how is that any better?" I asked. "You shouldn't be going to places like that when you're married." Lily laughed hysterically at our argument. Karen seemed exasperated but didn't strongly scold John. According to Karen's logic, if a husband goes to such places, it's because the wife isn't devoted enough. Getting upset over something like that is embarrassing. "The problem is you," she said. "If you were more devoted to John, this wouldn't happen." "I don't agree," I said. "Karen, isn't that a bit too unreasonable? This is the norm in this house. Besides, going to places like that or having an affair shows a man's prowess. A wife should forgive such things with a big heart." What was normal to them was absurd to me. Forgive visits to such places and affairs. There was no way I could do that. My frustration only grew. I couldn't just stand by any longer. Determined to change this unpleasant situation, I decided to take action. Karen and Lily remained the same day after day. They treated me like a servant. The two of them lounged around like sea lions on the sofa or floor, raising their voices when they were hungry. "Hey, why isn't lunch ready yet?" Karen would say. "It's already noon. Stop dragging your feet, Nicole. You're so slow. It's annoying." "Then why don't you make it yourselves?" I'd ask. "I've been cleaning the garden, airing out the carpets, and shopping with no time to rest." "Don't talk back," Karen would say. "Know your place as the daughter-in-law." I wasn't even allowed to voice my opinion. I was utterly fed up. I wanted a divorce immediately, but if it were that easy, I wouldn't have been struggling. John was introduced to me by Justin, a manager at a newspaper company. I was indebted to my boss, James, who also asked me not to do anything that would embarrass him. Karen knew this and often used it against me. I was completely stuck between a rock and a hard place for a while. All I could do was endure. Then one day, John's affair became undeniable. That friend from the other agency got concrete evidence. The first stage of my preparation was complete. I needed to plan my next move. About a month later, I think it was Lily who spread out a housing catalog on the dinner table after dinner. From every angle, it was clear that these were items I had put in my bag. "Look at this," she said. "Nicole was planning to buy a house." "Wait," I said. "Did you rummage through my bag?" "Why? Why would you do that?" "Just be quiet," she said. "Oh, it's a nice house, a bit in the countryside, but still." "Hey, Nicole," John said. "You should have discussed something like this with me." I had my eye on a house with a garden, as Karen said. It was in the countryside, but it looked quite good. I had already visited the place several times and met with the real estate agent. When I admitted this, the three of them became very interested. "What?" Karen said. "How far along are you in the process? Are you going to buy it?" "It's cheap and spacious," John said. "Not bad at all." "Ah, well, a house with a garden, huh?" Karen said. "That's a big decision. If you decide to become the head of your household, I'll support you. I'll even help a little financially. Wouldn't you like to leave here and live with Nicole in your place?" Before I could say anything, she was already encouraging John. How insincere. She had no intention of letting me go so easily. When I asked whose name the house would be under, John furrowed his brow. "I'm the head of the household," he said. "It'll be in my name." "Then can I proceed with the purchase?" I asked. "We'll buy this house and the two of us will move out, right?" "All right," John said. "I've decided. I'll buy the house. Go ahead and move forward with the arrangements." John finally made a firm decision. Karen and Lily both praised John for his decision, but I didn't miss it. The two of them exchanged a knowing smile. A few days later, just after purchasing the house with a garden in the countryside as planned, John and Karen, both grinning, made a unilateral announcement to me. "They are moving in too," Karen said. "What?" I said. "But you said we'd live there alone." "After thinking it over, we decided to live together," Karen said. "You're not going to say no, are you? If you refuse, I'll make John divorce you." I wonder what James would think of that. There it was, what a cowardly move. If Karen came, Lily would surely follow. I shuddered at the thought of daily harassment continuing even in the new house. "No way," I said. "I refuse. I have no intention of living there with you." Hey, pause for a moment. Would you care to support us? Like this video and subscribe for more. Now let's dive back into the story. "You don't seem to understand your position," Maria said, her eyebrows shooting up. Her face was red with anger, veins bulging at her temples. She pulled out divorce papers from somewhere, and John's part was already signed. Her face said she didn't care about anything as long as she got the house. "If you're going to refuse, then sign here," she said. "All right," I said. "I will. I'll sign. Let's get divorced. I've had enough." "What?" Karen said. "Hey, Nicole, are you sure about this?" "John, leave her. A useless woman like this is just going to make you angry. You're young. You'll find a new wife soon enough." Such harsh words. I quietly signed the divorce papers. She looked triumphant. She had no idea how I felt. My plan had worked perfectly, which was terrifying. I struggled to hold back my laughter. A few days after I moved into my new apartment, I received numerous calls from Karen. Checking my calendar, I realized it was indeed true. Today was their moving day. So she's figured it out. The incessant ringing was typical Karen. Ignoring them didn't help. They kept coming. Finally, I picked up due to her persistence. Karen didn't even greet me. She just started yelling. "Nicole, how could you do this?" she said. "What kind of house did you make us buy?" "Hello, Karen," I said. "Calm down. What are you talking about? I don't understand." "Don't play dumb," Karen said. "This house. You knew it was defective when you bought it, didn't you? That's right. The house I chose had issues. The ground was unstable, often causing the land to sink. Even a new house could have doors and windows that wouldn't close properly after a few years. There were old mining tunnels nearby that caused the problem. However, the locals knew this. They built their houses on stable land. Only clueless newcomers fell into this trap. I used this problem-ridden house to trap those three. It was tough to find a reasonably priced defective house, even with the help of a real estate agent. I also arranged for Lily to steal the real estate catalog from my bag. I had deliberately placed my bag in an easily noticeable and stealable position. Unaware, they fell right into the trap and moved in. It was hard to keep from laughing when I signed the divorce papers. I wanted to tell them everything, but I couldn't. I played dumb. "A defective house? That can't be right," Karen said. "There must be some mistake." "What is with that attitude? So fake. Just come over here." "What?" I said. "No, honestly, I don't ever want to see you again." "What? What did you say?" Karen said. There was no way I wanted to see that unreasonable family again. I told her I wouldn't meet them even if they paid me. Then John took over. "Nicole, please think about our situation a little," he said. "I could say the same to you, John," I said. Did you ever think about my feelings? No, you didn't. I was always isolated. I'm sorry, John said. I'll apologize. Just tell me where you moved to. Why would I tell you that? I said. If you showed up, I'd have to move again. I want to cut all ties with you. The conversation went nowhere. Eventually, Karen and the others started making even more outrageous claims. They said the divorce was invalid and that we were still family. I had 2 colleagues sign as witnesses and submitted the divorce papers to City Hall. Invalid? No way, I thought. How unreasonable could they be? Anyway, they insisted on meeting and talking. Even if I refused, they would surely call again. I had no choice. I decided to meet them and put an end to it myself. Fine, I said. I'll meet with you once. Thank you, Karen said. I owe you one, but I'll choose the time and place. Okay. I couldn't risk being ambushed or followed. I needed to have the upper hand to ensure my safety. After making careful preparations, I arranged to meet the 3 of them at a cafe. I arrived at the designated cafe 20 minutes late. Karen and Lily were already furious about being made to wait. John had a strained smile on his face. As expected, they were predictable. How dare you keep your elders waiting, Karen said. It's so disrespectful. I don't want to hear about respect from you, I said. So what do you want? What's with that attitude? It's infuriating. We're stuck with a defective house because of you, Karen said. Take responsibility. I told you. I don't know anything about that, I said. You decided to move in on your own, didn't you? She faltered. She couldn't deny that Karen and Lily had willingly moved into the defective house. Their previous home was being renovated by its owner, so the only place they had to live was the defective house. If you're done, I have something to say, I said. Karen, I will be suing you for damages. Prepare yourself. What damages? Karen said. Suing? Why? What did I ever do to you? Tell me. You mentally tormented me to the point of developing an adjustment disorder, I said. I showed them a copy of my medical diagnosis. The 3 of them stared at it intensely. Karen's eyes were especially wide. She probably never imagined I had been seeing a psychiatrist. You never thought about how much your words hurt others, did you? I said. It was very painful for me. I felt nauseous and cried a lot. It was tough. That's because you're weak, Karen said. You were a lousy daughter-in-law and deserved it, isn't that right? That's part of it, I said. Calling me a lousy daughter-in-law repeatedly is slander. Slander is punishable by up to a year in prison or a fine of up to $3,000. What? Karen said. That's ridiculous. What's ridiculous? Karen didn't understand the gravity of her actions. She had no idea how sinful her behavior had been and how harmful her verbal abuse was. You also did other things that are punishable by law, I said. You threatened me multiple times, saying you'd tell James about the divorce. That's extortion. Wait, isn't that a bit exaggerated? Karen said. It's not exaggerated at all, I said. By the way, extortion carries a penalty of up to 2 years in prison or a fine of up to $3,000. I won't back down on this. All right, Karen said. Wait a minute. Karen stepped in. Her eyes were sharper than usual. She had the look of a former delinquent, as if saying, I won't be intimidated by your threats. What is this? She said. Scaring my mom by taking advantage of her ignorance? Do you have any proof of these so-called slanders and threats? Yes, I do, I said. I've been recording everything. Recording? Karen said. Yes, I said. I had been recording with my phone's voice memo the entire time I lived at my ex-in-law's house. I have plenty of audio recordings. I also had data extracted specifically from Karen's abusive language. Submitting this as evidence would undoubtedly confirm the charges of slander and threats. Did you think I'd just take it? It's not just Karen, I said. Lily, you're also guilty. You'll be held accountable too. What? Lily said. Why me? What did I do? Think about it, I said. Haven't you committed any crimes? Or are you saying you haven't caused me any trouble? Of course not, Lily said. Don't be ridiculous. Lily insisted she was innocent. I showed her the screen on my phone. Lily's face turned pale. No wonder. It showed her rummaging through my bag, the ugly scene of her searching the contents while glancing around nervously. What? Lily said. How did you record this? Because my belongings frequently went missing after you arrived, I said. Makeup accessories, clothes, bags. I set up a hidden camera. "This is awful," Lily said. "How could you do that? You're just a daughter-in-law. Unbelievable. Who's the one overstepping boundaries here?" "Let me inform you about the penalty for theft," I said. "Up to 10 years in prison or a fine of up to $5,000. I'll be contacting the police." Lily's mouth opened and closed. She wanted to retort, but she couldn't. She looked completely helpless. I had kept track of all my missing items, knowing the exact extent of the damages would make it easier for the police and lawyers to act. If I was going to do this, I'd do it thoroughly. I was determined not to let these three off the hook. Finally, it was John's turn. He shrank back under my glare. If there was anyone I couldn't forgive the most, it was him. I believed marriage was about mutual support. But John, you saw things differently, didn't you? From start to finish, you were always my enemy, weren't you? "Enemy?" John said. "No, I never meant that. Not at all. Please believe me. Even today, I was trying to mediate as much as possible." "Sure enough, with the lies, I don't need your mediation." John was a cowardly man. He always sided with the stronger party. He had always been with Karen and Lily. Even now, he was trying to play me to save himself. If he had been a slightly better man, maybe I would have stayed married. If he had said, "Let's move away and live just the two of us," I might have done that. "The name of your affair partner," I said. "I believe it's Rebecca." "What?" John said. "How did you? How did I?" "I know," I said. "I had a friend investigate. I have a friend who's good at that. I even have pictures of you and Rebecca entering a hotel together. Look here, they are." No," John said. "Don't show them. Don't show them." John hurriedly tried to stop me from showing the screen. He didn't want his mother and sister to see his affair. But why should it matter? Their morals and ethics were already broken. They were a family of like-minded people. I put my phone, the copy of the diagnosis, and the pictures back in my bag. I had shown all the evidence I needed. Karen, John, and Lily seemed defeated and drained of resistance. If they did anything careless, they'd be reported to the police. They seemed scared, but unfortunately for them, I was fully intending to consult the police regardless of their actions. "I believe the police will come by eventually," I said. "Don't try to run. It'll only make things worse, and make sure you don't follow me, understand?" "Good," Karen said. "Nicole, don't be so cold. We were married until recently, remember?" "Yes," I said. "Honestly, I think marrying you was a huge mistake. I feel so relieved we're not a couple anymore. If you follow me, I'll press charges for that too. So be ready. Don't wait outside my office. Don't contact me unless it's necessary." I made a few simple agreements with the three of them and left the cafe. Even after I left, they sat there looking dejected. You can't stop people from talking. The news of John's divorce quickly spread at his company. The reasons, his infidelity and mistreatment of me, spread along with it. As a result, John faced significant cold treatment at work. After all, the person who had introduced us was Justin from the affiliated newspaper company. Naturally, John lost his trust and was viewed harshly. Unable to endure the hostile environment, John eventually quit. He struggled to find new employment, and his relationships with his mother and sister became strained. John reappeared in front of me about a year after our divorce. He called out to me as I was leaving work. I turned to see a shabby-looking man standing there. "John," I said, "I barely recognized you." "I know," John said. "People say my face has changed lately." He seemed to have gone through a lot. Understandable. Karen and Lily were convicted and fined. I had claimed alimony from John. They must be struggling financially now. They still had to pay off the mortgage on the defective house, so things were tough. "How are Karen and Lily?" I asked. "They're alive," John said. "Barely hanging on. They're both working now. They have to, or we won't survive." "They always say they want to go back to the old life," John said, "wanting to return to relying on my and your income. They haven't changed a bit. They're like parasites." Cutting ties with them was the right decision. I thought he might retort, but he didn't. John sighed deeply and apologized to me. "I'm sorry for everything," John said. "I deeply regret it. I was a fool. You were right. I should have always been on your side. I must have been out of my mind." "Your whole family has been out of their minds from the start," I said. "Don't be so cold. Please let's live together again. I'll cut ties with them for real this time. You're the only one for me." "Oh, really?" I said. Too bad. I'm seeing someone else now. Even if I wasn't, I'd never take you back. When I said that firmly, John collapsed to his knees, but a pity performance wouldn't work on me anymore. If I were less well-mannered, I would have spat on him right then. I left John there and went home. He never contacted me again. The information came from the real estate agent who had helped me. Karen, John, and Lily's lives had fallen apart. They blamed each other for their poverty, worsening their relationships. Neighbors heard shouting and glass breaking from their house almost every night. They berated and tormented each other but couldn't break free. It was nothing short of hell. They are quite isolated in the community, with no one wanting to interact with them. Eventually, they will likely sell their unsellable house for next to nothing and end up homeless with just their debts. I can picture the three of them huddling together, cursing each other under the cold sky someday. I'd like to see their miserable state firsthand after they've hit rock bottom. Meanwhile, I'm living a blissful life that seems almost unreal. It's thanks to my new partner, the one I mentioned to John. He's a successful salesperson at a major trading company, a mature man with a gentle nature who respects others' values. And he's also divorced, like me. We're planning to have a small wedding soon. My first marriage was an incredibly bitter experience. Even now, I sometimes tear up remembering the hardships. But even during those times, I feel warmth and comfort when I lean on him. This is where I belong. I took a long detour, but I finally arrived. That's how I feel. Because of the hardships I've endured, I can now be kinder to others. I want to use my experiences to live a positive and bright life. That's how I feel these days. Let's conclude the story shortly. Nicole's journey to escape her toxic in-laws was long and arduous, but she emerged victorious. The divorce, the legal battles, and the confrontation at the cafe were all stepping stones on her path to freedom. The experience left her scarred, but also stronger. The bitterness of her first marriage had taught her valuable lessons about trust, self-worth, and the importance of standing up for herself. Now, with her new partner by her side, Nicole is building a life filled with love, respect, and genuine happiness. The past is a reminder of her resilience, and the future holds the promise of a brighter, more fulfilling life. She has learned to forgive, not for them, but for herself, and to move forward with a heart full of hope. After experiencing the full journey of our story, we'd love to hear your thoughts. How did the story resonate with you? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay blessed. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. "Take care." That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. "I will do my best." Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. "Did you not hear what I said?" "I'm sorry." I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.